Good morning. My name is Marcia Stromgren with Just the Facts. And I have in the studio today Alanna Oswald. She's running at large for the 709 School District. Welcome, Alanna. It's good to have you here this morning.
Marcy.
We're going to talk about why you're running for the school board. And first of all, I'd like the viewers to know a little bit about your background. So if you could just
Sure.
tell us a little bit about your education, your family, whatever.
Yeah, I grew up in West Duluth all my life. I lived in the same house all my life, except when I went away to college. I graduated from Denfeld in 1991, and I went to Gustavus Adolphus College and got my BA in psychology, and came home and worked at the Remote Encoding Center for the post office for 8 years full time, and decided that was enough time in the post office, and went and stayed home with my kids for a year, and decided that was a little overwhelming because I was bored, and I had an opportunity to go work in the school district as an AmeriCorps Vista, and working under the federal programs director, and she was in charge of Title I and parent involvement and the reading partner programs at MacArthur and Stowe, and so I was placed in those schools, and I worked with her, and that's how I got the bug for education into me. I've kind of always known I've enjoyed education, and so I was actually able to participate and help teachers. I was everybody's right-hand woman, whatever there was extra to do or wherever help was needed, I did within both schools. And for my boss, I ended up writing grants and doing policies and doing staff development and touring the state to different conferences with her. And so I learned a lot about Title I and title programs and how all federal monies work in the districts and how they can be allocated and that kind of thing. And during that time, I was assigned working the Race, Culture, and Achievement Gap Summit, and that summit changed my life, and that it got 200 parents and administrators and teachers all together to talk about problems in the district and come up with solutions to how to fix them. And at that time, I decided I was going to go back to school and get my teaching license, which I did. I went to the College of St. Scholastica and got my teaching license in graduate school, in their first cohort of their graduate teaching licensure program, and went right to work in the district as a sub. And during that time, I also began working with the Education Equity Office, working for students of color and advocating for people in poverty too. And I learned a lot about how students are disadvantaged just by systemic things that people don't normally think about. And I learned to advocate for them, and I became a PASS trainer for the Education Equity Office. PASS stands for Parents and Students Succeeding, and we train parents on how to advocate for their kids within the system to help them, solve their own problems rather than needing help from other people. And it was very successful, and I worked with the most groups. I co-facilitated 9 groups. No one else has done that many. And then I moved on, and during that time went and got my master's in teaching. And I have 2 kids. One right now is at Denfeld in 10th grade, and my daughter is in 8th grade at Lincoln Park.
Alanna, you're probably the most qualified to run for the district of all of the people I've ever interviewed. It's amazing what background you have. Are you currently working in the district?
No, I'm not currently working in the district right now. My son, who has autism issues and Asperger's and anxiety and different things, he wasn't able to participate in his 8th grade year, and so I stayed home during that time. That's kind of when I stopped doing most of the things, and I'm slowly getting back into things now that he's readjusting to high school and is able to attend school on a regular basis.
I see.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So sounds to me like, from my experiences with the district monitoring, you perhaps know that I've been monitoring.
I've seen you many, many times there, yes.
And I've seen a lot of abusive parents. Mm-hmm. I've seen parents come with their complaints, and I don't see them getting fixed. So it sounds to me like you would be an excellent advocate for these parents, especially who are having trouble with the system listening to them.
Absolutely. I've done it already, and in fact, there's been a few parents that have just even reached out to me during my campaign, and in fact, just 2 days ago, and this parent was very upset about some issues that happened to both his son and his daughter, and I've been able to help him and help him understand the system and what's happening. And he's very appreciative and grateful, and I look forward to working with him more to help stop what had happened in his case from continuing, because it's about improvement. Everybody needs to learn to do better, and we can always do better, especially when it comes to conflict and misunderstandings and communication. There's a huge lack in communication.
Oh, I will amen to that one. Okay. You had some questions you wanted me to ask, and I think these are excellent for the viewers to understand. How do you plan to be involved in the schools and stay informed on the needs of our schools when you're elected?
Well, first of all, with my background within the last 10 years, I've made a lot of acquaintances and relationships within the schools, and those people that work within the schools and other parents that attend them do naturally already come to me to tell me what's going on. I do know how to reach out to certain people to find out what's going on, just in random conversations. I am part of parent groups at both Lincoln and Denfeld. And I'm active in both of those. I'm also a robotics mentor at Denfeld too.
Okay.
I'm in the schools most from January until March. Definitely, I'm at Denfeld.
So it's not a transition role for you whatsoever. I'm
already there.
You're already there. You're on the ground, and you're prepared to go. Wow, that is great
Absolutely.
to hear that.
Yep. Well, and I forgot to mention that I also participate at the Department of Education also on a committee called the Title I Committee of Practitioners as a parent representative, and I'm there to help understand changes to the law and legislature and money allocations and making sure that they remain parent-friendly and coming up with new ideas and brainstorming ways to involve parents more within education.
Okay.
So it's a natural conclusion from what I'm already doing as a parent and as an educator within the schools.
Great.
Yeah.
What will guide your decisions and your vote when discussing budget items?
The budget is tricky. It's $134 million as of last year. It always fluctuates some. The guiding factor will always be, how is it going to affect kids? You need to make decisions that are in the best interests of the students and the families. And if it's not in the best interests, you need to find ways and creative ways to think outside the box to make it so it's the best scenario possible. Even if there has to be like a decrease in funding in certain areas or different things, there are different approaches to decisions that can be more detrimental than others. I, however, want to find creative ways and research new sources of funding and look at grants and different things to get what we need and what we want, rather than always responding and thinking about cuts and how to shift money around to make it more equitable. I would rather find the program and then find the resources that will make it equitable.
So in other words, you don't want to keep playing the shell game, which is what I've been seeing. And as a business owner, I have been severely affected, as many other business owners in this community. And what have we seen with our dollars? They keep using kids to get more dollars, and yet they have not given us smaller class sizes. They have not given us a better education. The children are leaving the district because the parents are dissatisfied with what is happening with their children.
Yes.
And so that leads into the question of increasing competition is decreasing the district's enrollment. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas on this to retain our students?
Well, Edison's opening up a new high school in 2017. That's firmly in place and moving forward. Harbor City's another attractive option for a lot of students that just don't fit in. There's always going to be, some sort of student that we can't help, and there needs to be very good alternatives out there in the community for them to go to. But I don't want them to make that a first choice. I want that to have to be their last choice. The way I see retaining students is that we need to make the best decisions possible and serve each individual student, and not just think about the majority populations or serving the biggest groups. We need to think about what does each student want from their education because those parents, have all these options out there, including different districts to go to if we can't give them what they want for their kids. And so that also means involving them in the conversations. One of the best forums that I participated in was the student question forum, where students of color came to us and asked us candidates, questions that pertain to them. And it's amazing to see through their eyes how all of the school board decisions are affecting them.
Yes.
And nobody knows that because their voices aren't heard. Yes, we have, student representatives on the school board, but that's not enough because they have a solitary experience within their group of students, and we need to have more voices at the table to understand what they're going through. And, okay, is a $100 parking fee too much? I think so. For kids, especially if we have a high concentration of poverty. Sure, at Denfeld it costs less, and East it costs more. Why? I don't know. Those are issues of equity too. At Denfeld I understand it only costs $70 for a parking permit, where at East it costs $100. Yet they're both parking lots. So, what is the difference, and why are those decisions being made, and why is it so much? I think those kinds of things that affect students directly need to be considered always in every decision you make, because it is about the kids and how we educate them.
Well, and when I was at one of the Kids First thing at East, East students were complaining about the disruption in a presentation in their auditorium.
Oh.
And they wanted to know, they wanted it stopped. They wanted respect from the rest of the student body when they were making a presentation, and I'm going, oh my goodness, how simple is that to correct?
Yes.
I went to Denfeld too. And you know what? They didn't get away with anything like they're getting away with today.
True.
There's a certain faction of students that are making it difficult for other people to learn.
Yes.
And there doesn't seem to be the control that needs to be implemented so that those kids that are disrupting the class are removed. And if they can't behave themselves, maybe they shouldn't be in school. And they can go to the alternative schools, because when I was campaigning, there was no bullying problem at the charter school. Now, why don't they have a bullying problem at Harbor City, where my granddaughters have gone? Why don't they have a problem at the other charter schools? Why is it so rampant in Duluth? What is wrong with the system in Duluth that parents are leaving because of the bullying problem? That is one of the issues. And yet we have this bullying campaign, and you see it at the school board. There's bullying going on there for other people on the board, but they don't get a handle on it in the system. I don't understand it. Do you have any idea as to how that could be dealt with?
I have some thoughts about why it occurs, and with those thoughts, I think there are options to look at. I do believe our schools have reduced the amount of discipline that they're willing to do, perhaps out of fear of lawsuits, perhaps out of fear of offending people or student groups, or maybe it's just a budgetary reason, things like that. Peripheral services go away in times of budget crisis. And so we have come to rely on other people to take care of those kinds of things. That's why, we have a disproportionate number of kids getting, into the legal system from police presences in our school. The police, sure, they need to be there, they need to form these relationships, but I don't know exactly how much they need to be involved in the discipline of the students. That's the school's responsibility, and to provide a safe environment, and
Yes.
They can't employ safety. They have to create it. And so we need to look at better ways to encourage safe behaviors and safety for all kids. And I think that also comes from empowering the teachers to be able to stand up to these students without fear of doing something wrong, or being held responsible for an incident that gets twisted out of proportion or context and things like that. There's a culture of fear among a lot of the teachers, just being scared to do something, and because administrators tend to look at them in ways that they're creating the problem rather than trying to help the problem. And that's not okay, because teachers are there to teach, and they need to have a calm, safe environment to teach in, and they need to be able to enforce that environment. And yet, if they don't get support from the people that are there that are supposed to help them, they can't do it. It's like tying your hands behind your back and blindfolding you and telling you to jump into the blind blue sky. I don't know.
Things have changed, Alanna.
Yes,
Let me
they
tell
have.
you.
Well, I'm
we
sure
used
from
to
you
be
and me.
fearful of the teachers. There was no
Yes.
teacher that did not discipline within their classrooms when I was in school. So the atmosphere has changed, and I empathize with these teachers. I mean, I know many teachers, and they have told me this, so
Yes.
you're not telling me something that I'm not aware of.
And I know from personal teaching experiences and from my teacher friends that I know.
Yeah, that is really sad when they don't have the
Yes.
authority.
I was just at my daughter's conferences last night at Lincoln Park, and you know, one of her teachers was telling me how, you know, eventually she had to remove a couple kids from her classroom because they were using foul language all the time. I mean, something that simple, that kids in today's schools feel they're entitled to be disrespectful by using foul language. And you know, words that aren't even necessary in our vocabularies. It blows me away that kids can feel that entitled.
Well, and it comes from the home environment. We know
True.
that that's a
Yes.
good portion of the problem. I mean, we can't blame it all on the schools. I mean,
No.
I'm not blind to the fact that where it's coming from.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, there is no authority of that teacher to
Right.
stop it. And sometimes I've talked to people that have quit the system because they were just sick and tired of dealing with children they had to be fearful of, and they didn't enjoy their work anymore. And that we shouldn't have that problem. That to me is a major problem for why people are going to other alternatives. They just don't want their kids subjected to the potential violence that could go on in the classroom, and see these other children controlling, and then their child is not getting what they need because of all the
Yes.
attention being focused on a child who's out of control. So
Yes. And the meetings that Representative Eric Simonson has had, that I've been present at, to discuss between Marshall, Edison, Harbor City, and Duluth the effects of Edison opening up a new high school. During those conversations, they compliment Harbor City and Edison and Marshall for being able to provide stellar programming that is teaching their kids. And the conversation is, why isn't Duluth doing that yet? These other places are. Harbor City is a reward school, and just yesterday, you know, Brenda Cassellius, the Commissioner of Education, visited there to applaud them and thank them for doing so well. Edison has been a reward school in the past, and they continue to move forward. And their drive to build this high school is at the request of their parents. It's not that they set out to do this, it's that their parents are saying they want to continue this journey in the same environment. It's a no-brainer for most parents that if you're being successful in one place, you don't want it to end. So we need to create a successful environment, and I believe we can do that. That's the message I have is I believe there's improvement, and it's always possible, and we can be the best. That's how I hope to get some students back, is by creating the best options available anywhere in the surrounding area. And if we can't do that, there's definitely a problem systemically and institutionalized behaviors that are preventing the change. And then we might have to look at, you know, reorganizing a system or something. But because in essence, we can not be solvent anymore and dissolve as a school district if we can't keep our kids. We can't maintain the levels of services if we lose more, you know, students. We can't maintain the jobs and the staff and the buildings, and it can all come crumbling down, since our buildings were built with a projection of a certain enrollment and a certain amount of students to serve, and it's not happening. And we need to make it happen.
Wow. That could end our whole interview here. I think you said a whole lot.
Well, thank you.
That. Okay. How do you believe the district can increase graduation rates? I think we kind of covered that, really, didn't we?
We kind of, a little bit,
Yeah.
yes. There's shocking statistics as it is. I brought up at the very last forum that we had that if you're a white girl going to East, 95% of white girls going to East graduate. It's an amazing number. It's unheard of, essentially, but yet, 2 out of 5 Blacks, African Americans, or Native Americans don't. Or, well, 2 out of 5 do graduate, 3 don't graduate. And so, the percentage is about 44% for Blacks and 48% for Native Americans and indigenous people. And there's no excuse for that. If we can educate one segment to 95%, but yet not others, what are we doing? And we need to figure that out because we can be successful. So we need to be successful for everyone. And we're not successful until everyone is graduating at 100%.
No.
That's the sign of a successful education system, and we need to improve because our society depends on those kinds of things. We can, work to eliminate the poverty and the crime and all sorts of things because of a lack of education. There are other reasons for those things, but we can eliminate the lack of education portion of those.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, that's what the educational system is supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you this. You said the percentage rate of the white girls graduating. Is there a percentage of Black, both male and female, going to East that are graduating versus what's going on at Denfeld?
Yes, every graduation rate at East is higher than at Denfeld by roughly 20 points.
Really?
Percentage points, yes.
Okay.
So you can get district overall numbers, but we've broken them down into East and Denfeld. One of the things that Superintendent Gronseth constantly mentions when it comes to the overall graduation rate for the whole district is that there's other systems that feed into that graduation rate, such as, ALC, the Alternative Adult Learning Center, the residential programs like Woodland Hills and some of the hospitals and Arrowhead Juvenile Center has a program also, which, right then and there, if you're a child that gets in trouble with the law, you get to spend some time at Arrowhead Juvenile Center, and it's time for you to say, hey, you did something wrong, but you get a fresh start. However, out of the last 4 years at Arrowhead Juvenile Center, only 3 people have graduated from there, or gotten their high school diploma, out of about 150 to 170 students. 3.
And they're all going to Denfeld?
They're all from all over the place.
But most of them go to which school?
I actually think there's more of a majority of students from outside the district that come into the district just because they're at Arrowhead Juvenile Center. But that's not an excuse because they still count on our rolls and we need to educate them. They're our responsibility.
Okay, are they being educated at Denfeld or within that?
They're being educated at AJC.
So within the system,
yes.
They're not coming to Denfeld?
No.
So they have nothing to do with the figures for Denfeld? And
Not Denfeld, but for the district overall.
For district overall. So
yes.
The question would have to be, so why aren't they getting a better education? Why isn't Denfeld getting a better education versus East? That is a question I think people should be asking.
And the reason I bring that up is to make the point that, that's exacerbating the prison to pipeline road.
Yes, it is.
Is that, your AJC is supposed to be a time to learn what you did wrong and give you a fresh start.
Right.
And yet, if you can't graduate and can't get your education while you're there, it's not going to help.
It's not working.
So
yeah, it's not working.
You're just going to continue what's going on, and that's frustrating. And same thing with the Adult Learning Center. Less than 50% of kids that go to the Adult Learning Center graduate. A lot of them disappear. There's actual category of unknown that they don't know what happens to them. They just stop coming and nobody ever knows. So it's really frustrating. And we can do a better job at supporting those kids that need the extra help. This is where those kids need the extra help.
They come there initially thinking they're going to get some help, and yet they wind up not getting the help that is necessary to help them. And I will give you one example of a young lady who was working in a place where I was going all the time, and so I'd oftentimes talk to her. And she said they make it difficult in their scheduling for a person who's holding down a job
Yes.
and maybe living, well, she did. She lived out in the
teen-
country, one of the townships.
Sure.
The scheduling is difficult for them to get the classes they need. So I can tell you
Yes.
that's one issue that
Yes.
I've heard about, amongst many others of different
and
people.
one of the students at the student candidate forum brought up the fact that they were doing a credit recovery course for a course that they had failed the year before, and they were only a sophomore. And the requirements, all of a sudden, they used to be able to do the credit recovery right at Denfeld, and now, because they removed that program from Denfeld and put it in the Adult Learning Center, they have to have so many check-ins down at the clock tower building, at the the board building.
Main campus.
Yes, and
Old center.
and yet the student has an after-school job and doesn't drive, and if he doesn't check in 19 times, he has to have 19 separate check-ins downtown that he can't pass, no matter what work he does. Most of the work that they do in credit recovery is online anyway, but they have to have these face-to-face check-ins. And so that's just setting kids up for failure. My job as a school board member would to eliminate any barrier to a student's success. That was a very poor decision to have made, to make students, who are already struggling, have another obstacle to overcome just to get an education. It's very frustrating.
It sounds to me like there's a lot of work to be done here, and I don't know. We maybe time for one other question.
I'll be brief.
Poverty affects students more and more. What can the district do better to help these families? Okay, we got 2 minutes.
2 minutes to tell you all about poverty.
Well, 1 minute to tell me and then 1 minute to wind up.
All right. Poverty, the way out of poverty has been proven by research over and over again is through education.
Right.
And educational opportunities for those that can embrace it. They are able to overcome poverty. We aren't providing the resources necessary to people experiencing poverty because there are always barriers to the education. And I think that the prime example are the graduation rate differences between East and Denfeld, because East has a 25% free and reduced lunch poverty rate. Denfeld has a 60%. And right then and there, that can explain a lot of differences and how we need to find more ways to provide equitable education for our kids.
Well, in saying all of that, Alanna, I'd love to have more time here. But once you're elected, then perhaps we can make some changes here because you have a lot of insight. I will say this. I grew up in the western part of the city. I now know that was working class people, period. And there was poverty, but we didn't know it was poverty because these people that were working, like my mother and my father, we weren't in a poverty situation. We had what we needed, not what we wanted. So, there's some of that in there too.
Absolutely.
But nonetheless, they had many kids in the family, 10 kids average, a Catholic family. And so they were struggling, but we got a good education. We could go to Denfeld, we could go to Lincoln. We went to the schools and they were providing us with an education.
Yes.
I think there is no excuse today to
We know
better
We need to do
this
better.
situation for all of our students and stop this situation. So I look forward to filming you after November
Well, thank you.
election, starting in January, as I have done for the last few years. And I do wish you the best as you,
Thank you.
try to get that seat. So thank you for coming in today.
You're very welcome.